I want to talk to you about what I call the engagement ladder. I identify 5 levels of engagement by students in a classroom. I come by these from my experience observing students during 20 plus years of teaching. These are not official labels used in a legal process such as writing an IEP or 504 plan. And of course, this is more a spectrum than 5 definitive levels, as the borders between them will be somewhat fluid and blurred depending on the circumstances and the student. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Level 1 I would label as active, disengagement, and non-compliance. These are students who willfully resist participating in the lesson. I cannot come up with too many students I have encountered who were at level 1, and when I did, I would love to say I was able to turn them around and get them engaged. Occasionally, but unless it is a unique situation on a specific day, a student at this level of a disengagement has been working pretty hard at resisting participation for a while. Reaching these students often happens in incremental steps, over time, with efforts from many individuals. The longer a student is at this level, the harder to reach. I suspect for younger students at this level, it might be a more ephemeral instance connected to a specific circumstance. The older the student, the more likely this behavior has deeper roots, is more entrenched, and harder to correct. I label level 2 as passive disengagement and non-compliance. For students who are disengaged, I have seen them at this stage more often than at level 1. This student is disengaged, but will re-engage briefly when the teacher makes a specific, individualized effort to re-engage them, maybe only to get the teacher off his or her back. I can picture more students at this level than level 1. He or she might sit in the back with the hoodie pulled up and staring off into the distance. It is tempting to let these students be, at least for a while. But it is your job to work at drawing them out of their isolation from the rest of the class or the content. Just like with the student at level 1, there isn't a quick fix, unless it truly is an isolated incident. Instead, it requires incremental steps of relationship building and repeated attempts so as not to give up on the student. The worst thing you can do is reinforce the self-fulfilling prophecy that school is not for them. Level 3 is passive engagement and compliance. I think it is safe to say that this is where the majority of students live at when they are in school. I suspect this is especially so the older the students, when you are also dealing with peer pressure and the desire to not stand out or appear too eager and enthused to learn. Students here are engaged as much as necessary to complete the task, but that's it. And if this is where you and most of your students are at most of the time, I suspect it will be a long and arduous year. Level 4, Extrinsic Active Engagement. This is almost as good as it gets. You have a student's full attention, active participation, even enthusiastic enjoyment while doing the activity. But in the end, it is still school, and participation ultimately is the result of an extrinsic motivator. A grade, punishment for a bad grade, parent approval, teacher approval, participation in extracurriculars, and so on. Now, if you had most of your class here most of the time, I bet your students enjoy class and you enjoy teaching them. But level 5 is the holy grail of teaching, intrinsic active engagement. If you and your students forget it is school, at least for a while, and they are actively engaged purely to complete the task because they now want to, well, that's the goal, no? It happens. And when it does, soak it in, because that's as good as it gets as a teacher, especially if it is with a student who has worked their way up the ladder. There is no one trick to getting your students to the top of the ladder. But of all the teachers I have seen with this ability, these things are in common. They know the students. They are authentic with their students, so they trust him or her even when they don't agree. The task is authentic, and the students can easily understand why they are doing it and how it fits into something bigger than just that assignment. In the end, these are what I have found it takes to have a classroom of engaged students.